Welcome back to my next UFC related video, and I hope everybody out there enjoyed UFC 301. And I'm not going to talk about the results of that card because the card, at least in my time, hasn't happened yet, as I'm recording this video about 5 hours before the prelims of UFC 301 even happened. So I want to apologize to all of you that come to this channel to see my reaction to these fights. I just wanted to take an event off. That's why I'm not talking about it on the channel other than this video. Truth be told, June has two huge pay-per-view cards. They have the Saudi card, and these events cost a lot of money, these numbered pay-per-view events. And I could have ordered it, but I just wanted to take one off. We just had UFC 300 last month, which was crazy, and I watched every single I reacted to every single fight on that card. And again, I just want to take one off. I hope that everybody enjoys the card. I hope the card is crazy and bonkers, so I regret making that decision. But with all that said, you can see the title of this video. I'm going to be giving you my top 10 favorite UFC fights of all time. My opinion, of course, and I guess there's a disclaimer. I've only been watching the UFC since 2011. I was a very casual fan that would only order Jon Jones cards. And then I finally ordered a non-Jon Jones card when I saw Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva 2. So I'm not going to include any fights before 2011. I have seen some of the classics, probably most of them. I just have a recency bias, and it is what it is. All the fights I'm going to be talking about are after 2011. In fact, after like 2013, I believe. So just so you know, if there's a fight that you think maybe I haven't seen yet and I need to see it, make sure you leave that down in the comment section. Of course, leave your ranking of your top 10 UFC fights of all time. If you want to do like your top 10 after 2011 to kind of make it easier for you, because I know some of you have like 100 fights that you want to talk about. There's so many fights and they have so many events, it's hard. So there's that. And again, these fights, the whole fight might not be crazy, but the moments that are in the fight make it a good fight. That makes my list. But before I give my top 10 favorite fights of all time, housekeeping tips, of course. If you're a fan of the UFC and you like UFC prediction videos as well as reaction videos, and you want to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, please make sure that you hammer fist that like button. Share this video with a friend. Put this video on any one of your social media platforms. Don't forget to sound off in the comment section about what your ranking of your top 10, however you want to do it, UFC fights, either of all time, most recent fights, whatever you want to do. And of course, I react to mostly all the UFC cards, the pay-per-view cards, except for the UFC 301. I'm going to put my reaction, my fight reaction highlight reel from 2023 right here. I'll put my reaction to Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill from UFC 300 right there. And I'll put my reaction to Gaethje versus Holloway right there. That will be at the end of this video with about 20 seconds left, the end screen. And then I'll put something down here, something from UFC 300, probably Alexander Rakic versus Yuri Prochazka. So make sure you check those videos out and like them, comment, whatever you want to talk about. So, kicking things off, my top 10 favorite fights in the UFC of all time. I want to give you some honorable mentions. There's a lot of fights. There's ones that cross my mind, but they just can't make the list. Like, a lot of people talk about the Ultimate Fighter 1 finale between Stephan Bonnar and Forrest Griffin. I think it's a good fight, but I just don't think it's this amazing fight. At one point it was on my list, but it just, there's been so many fights, and the UFC has evolved, so it's a good fight, but it doesn't make my list. Shogun versus Henderson, crazy fight, back and forth. I just don't really care about it. So that at one point was on my list, but didn't make it. You have Khamzat Chimaev versus Gilbert Burns. Good fight. It was on my last ranking of fights that I liked, but it didn't make the list this time. There's a fight between Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler, which some people wouldn't include anywhere near their top 10. I really liked that fight. I thought it was a lot of fun, at least the first round of the fight. didn't make the list. You have a fight, Nate Landwehr versus David Onama, a recent fight that was really crazy. It's mostly one-sided, but at times the fight was crazy. That didn't make the list, so there's a million different fights I could have included, and I thought about those fights, but they didn't, unfortunately, make the list. And, of course, Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum. Thought about putting that one, but it didn't make the list. But coming in at number 10 from UFC 165, this is the oldest fight on this video, would be John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson 1. You have Gustafsson, this relatively unknown. People knew about him, but he wasn't super established in the UFC, but he was undefeated at the time. Just jabbing John Jones, and John Jones, this elite guy that's never really been hurt in the UFC before, other than the Vitor Belfort armbar, all of a sudden is like in trouble. He's losing the round one, and I'm not going to score the fight again. It's been a while since I've seen the fight, but Jones eventually does a spinning elbow that rocks Gustafsson in the fourth round and almost finishes Gustafsson in that round. And then you have head kick after head kick after head kick, and Gustafsson, the lights are on, but nobody's home. I don't know how Gustafsson was standing, but it was a fun fight. It was a dog fight for John Jones, who, other than that armbar, had not been tested in the UFC. I think Lyoto Machida would have given John Jones a lot of problems, but Jones just caught him in a choke. That fight would have been a tougher fight had Jones not finished it when he did. But Gustafsson versus Jones, with Jones winning by, I believe it was a split decision, comes in at number 10. Coming in ninth place for me, the main event of UFC 275, Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka. I didn't think Glover Teixeira stood a chance. I thought it was great that he beat Jan Blachowicz. I was happy that Glover Teixeira won the light heavyweight championship, but he's going to get dominated by Yuri Prochazka. And, well, Prochazka had moments in this fight. Glover Teixeira was winning the fight. He was going to win the fight. He had Prochazka in mount with like a minute left. Prochazka gets out of the mount, gets a choke with no hooks in, and is able to tap Glover Teixeira with like 30 seconds left, because I think Glover probably didn't have any gas left in the tank after that war that they had. But it was mainly Glover Teixeira. It was mainly one-sided, but Prochazka had his moments. And I might be getting some of the facts wrong. I didn't just watch the fight before doing this video. I'm just going by memory. But Prochazka wins. When I thought he would win, but I thought it would go a lot different. Glover Teixeira was a tough MFer in those last few years of his fight career. So UFC 275's main event, Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prochazka, comes in ninth place. In eighth place for me, the main event of UFC 202, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. This was a fun fight. It was a 5-round fight. McGregor wins. And at times, McGregor was hurt in this fight. Diaz was hurt in this fight. These guys just had some good fights. And even their first fight from UFC, 198? I don't remember exactly what event it was. Or was it 199? That was a crazy fight, too. And honestly, I considered putting that. And I guess, you know what? I should back up. There's one other fight that I forgot to mention. It's not a UFC fight. It's a Strikeforce fight between Nick Diaz and Paul Daly. Crazy fight. Only lasts, I think there's a finish within the first round, but it's like 4 minutes and 58 seconds. And they just go back and forth whether you think this guy's going to get knocked out or finished. And then it goes to the other guy, Diaz, Daly. And it was a crazy fight, but I thought I mentioned it. But anyway, McGregor Diaz 2 from UFC 202, which they wanted it to happen at UFC 200. I wish in retrospect it would have, because John Jones failed that test and him and DC didn't even fight. So Misha Tate versus Amanda Nunes was the main event. But McGregor Diaz went at it. They had two really good fights. This one was an awesome fight. Hopefully they have another fight. I'm not sure how excited I am about it, because I feel like both these guys have already had their best days in the octagon. But hey, if they can have another good fight, I'm all for it. But Diaz-McGregor 2 with Conor McGregor winning by decision comes in at number 8. Number 7 for me was from UFC 189, Rory McDonald versus Robbie Lawler 2. Now, the whole fight itself wasn't always entertaining. There was a couple boring moments in the fight. But when they connected and when they went at it, they went at it. You had Robbie Lawler winning the fight, and then McDonald, and I don't remember which round it was because I didn't recently watch the fight. It's probably been about a year or two since I watched the fight. All of a sudden, Rory McDonald's hitting him, and he actually splits Robbie Lawler's lip, which was crazy. But then in this fight, and I think this happened before this, Rory McDonald's nose is broke, and Lawler's just tagging him, and finally in the 5th round, the referee stops it. I believe it was Big John McCarthy. I could be wrong on that. And it was just great. And it's one of the best post-fight interviews where Robbie Lawler says, I'm going to keep on coming. I'm going to do it. I'm going to keep on coming. And it was just great. What a fight. Maybe not the whole 25 minutes was entertaining, but a lot of it, in my opinion, was entertaining. And that lip being split open was crazy. Rory McDonald's nose being almost off his body. Awesome fight. So that's my number 7. Coming in 6th place was from the Ultimate Fighter 25 finale between Justin the Highlight Gaethje and Michael Johnson. Now, this wasn't the TUF finale, but it was the main event of the TUF finale, and this was a classic. I wish it would have been in an arena instead of just a small setting, but it was crazy, bonkers. This was Justin Gaethje's UFC debut. Michael Johnson is no slouch. He's a really good fighter, and he tagged Gaethje a couple times. Gaethje kept leg kicking him. In the end, Justin Gaethje wins with a finish in the 2nd round, I believe. But it was a really fun fight, and a fight that I've watched a lot. Just recently, actually, where the other fights I've talked about so far, I haven't watched for at least a year, but Michael Johnson versus Justin Gaethje, the TUF 25 finale, comes in 6th place. Number 5 for me is one I just added to the list, but the fights happened for 3 or 4 years, and that was from the Vegas 4 event, Dustin the Diamond Poirier versus Dan Hooker. Now, this event I wish would have been an arena, a sold-out arena, but you could hear the thuds. Now, every round of the fight isn't entertaining, but the first couple rounds, they went at it. Poirier and Hooker went at it. You could hear the thuds from all their shots. They were landing some bombs. In the end, Dustin Poirier wins the fight because he starts grappling and laying on Hooker. But, man, they had some really awesome rounds, and it's a fight that I've watched a couple times within the last couple months, and I'm like, why is this not on the list? Even though it was in an empty arena, essentially, well, the Apex with a few people, it was a classic. So Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker, the Vegas 4 is going to be number 5. Coming in 4th place from UFC 248, the co-main event of the evening, Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. These women went at it. Joanna Jędrzejczyk's head at the end of the fight, she looked like Frankenstein. Her forehead was 8 times bigger than when it was going in. The hematoma that she had was crazy, but it was a fun fight. The best female fight of all time. I don't know if anything will ever be able to top it. I think there was one recently that was really good, but this was, the co-main event of UFC 248 before the world went to shit for a few years. What a great fight. Unfortunately, Yoel Romero and Israel Adesanya followed that up with a snooze fest, but Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Zhang Weili, they went at it. What a fun fight. I really liked the fight. I wish I had been recording my reaction. And I guess looking back on it, I did for the final round of the fight or final 2 rounds. I recently just found that on my channel. I didn't remember doing that. But it was the second time I'd ever recorded my reaction to a fight card. The one before that, the Jones versus Dominic Reyes fight, was the first fight that I actually recorded my reaction to. But Zhang Wei Li, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, or Jung, I don't know how to say it. Probably saying it wrong. Jędrzejczyk is the closest that I can come to it, because it's not something that I can pronounce with Z's and J's and K's and that. But what a fun fight. Zhang Wei Li wins. Joanna actually hits a spinning back fist with like 5 seconds left. If there would have been like another 20 seconds left in the fight, if she would have followed that up with an onslaught, she may have been able to win the fight. But she didn't. Zhang Wei Li wins the fight, and it was an awesome fight. So that's why that's my number 4. Coming in third place, the fight on this list that I've watched the most, or the most recent fight that I've watched, is going to be from UFC 245. The main event of the evening, Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington 1. This was crazy. I'm looking at this fight on paper. You've got two guys that are really good with wrestling, and I'm actually contemplating not ordering the card because I don't really want to see them try to lay at each other 4 or 5 rounds. But that's not what we got. We didn't get any takedowns. We got basically Covington and Usman standing in the middle of the octagon, trading blow after blow after blow. You may not like Colby Covington, but man, he earned my respect by dominating Ruthless Robbie Lawler and then having the fight that he had against Kamaru Usman. Now, Usman does win by TKO in the 5th round with like a minute left to go. There's some argument to be said that Mark Goddard stopped the fight early. I mean, Covington's not answering the strikes. He's just laying on his stomach with his arms around Usman's legs. And, it's said that he was trying to stand up and he was getting some illegal shots. But you know what? Usman was clocking him with like 2 minutes left to go in that round. Covington started round 5 out great. And then all of a sudden, Usman just got him with some straight punches that rocked Covington and knocked him down a couple times. But man, this was a crazy fight. I can't believe how awesome Usman and Covington the first fight was. And even the second fight, not as good, but still entertaining. So I had to put Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman 1 on this list. And that's why that comes in at number 3. My second favorite fight of all time is going to be from UFC 206, an event that I did not order. Doo Ho Choi versus Cub Swanson. Now, one could argue it's more one-sided. Cub Swanson's landing all the shots in this fight. But there's times where Choi is all of a sudden coming at Swanson. These precision punches that he's landed are about to finish Cub Swanson. But Swanson survives, and he's just rocking Choi with all these punches, and Choi won't fall down. It was just crazy. It was my favorite fight of all time at one point. Never really thought I would like a fight with Doo Ho Choi and Cub Swanson, but man, I love the fight. Wish I would have saw that live. Wish I would have reacted to that fight live, because that would have been a fun one to talk about. But anyway, Cub Swanson is your winner. Doo Ho Choi's stock in this fight obviously gets raised a lot. I hope we see Doo Ho Choi again. His last fight, he was there a disqualification or something like that? Or it was a draw because of an eye poke or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he hasn't fought in over a year. I hope we see Doo Ho Choi again because he's a really good fighter. If you be a little bit more aggressive and not just have those precision punches, maybe add some uppercuts and some overhands to his repertoire. But Doo Ho Choi versus Cub Swanson from UFC 206 is my number 2. So that leaves my favorite fight of all time from UFC 268, Justin the Highlight Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. I have some bias because these are two of my favorite active fighters right now. So that added to the fact that these guys are fighting. And in the first round, they went at it. Both of them had moments where they were going to win the fight in the first round. Gaethje's leg kicking the shit out of Chandler. Chandler's landing bombs to Gaethje where Gaethje wobbles back, and then Chandler just throwing everything he can. Gaethje, of course, kind of takes over in the second and third round, but Chandler keeps on coming. He does knock Chandler down in the second round with an uppercut and had Gaethje, and I don't know how good Gaethje is with submissions. He only has one submission victory on his record. It was a long time ago. He could have probably finished Chandler by either a submission or some type of ground and pound in that second round, but no, he just wants to punch. And credit to Gaethje for that, but man, this was a fun fight. I really enjoyed reacting to this fight, and I really loved it. Gaethje, of course, wins by unanimous decision. They started the main card off with this fight, and I'm damn glad they did, because this was fun. Gaethje, Chandler in that first round, that was an epic round, and that's why Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje is my current favorite fight of all time. So what did you think? I hope I at least have one or two fights that you have in your ranking for your top 10 favorite fights of all time. Maybe I don't, though. I know I'm including everything, after 2011, a couple of years after 2011 with Jones versus Gustafsson 1 as my favorite, but I hope I at least make you go, okay, yeah, that's a good fight. Again, all the fights that I didn't mention or that didn't make the ranking, like Kelvin Gastelum versus Israel Adesanya, or even the Nick Diaz versus Paul Daly from Strikeforce fight, again, wasn't including non-UFC fights, but that would definitely make a list if I did all-time favorite MMA fights. But that would be the only fight that's not in the UFC, but, it is what it is. I hope you all enjoyed this video. This is, again, my opinion. Make sure you leave whatever ranking that you want to leave down in the comment section. Share this video again. Put this video on any one of your social media platforms. Click right here for my Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill video. Click right here for my 2023 fight highlight. Gaethje Holloway right here. And then Rakic versus Prochazka right here. And then last but certainly not least, don't forget to hit that sub button. Subscribe to the channel, join the team, show your damn support, and be a part of something special. And you never know where you're going to see on JDev TV.